despite these issues, at the start of the year, despite the issues of not necessarily being a force that is quick to mobilize, something quite wonderful has been taking place at SOAS. SOAS fractional staff started to break out of the isolation in which we have become accustomed to or normalized to. We've broken out of isolation of our transient temporary worker status and started to speak to each other. We started to realize that the story that we are told, that our jobs are simply providing us with teaching experiences because of the benevolence of the school, is somewhat misleading, if not an outright distortion. In fact, what we realized is that we are helping to maintain this school at a very low cost. We initially first went and spoke to our union and pushed for our issues to be recognized within the union, and we were told constructively that we should go and get organized, get information together, and build a campaign, which we did. We took it on ourselves to get organized, to get this information together. And we conducted what many of you will know about the Fractionals for Fair Play survey, in which we conducted a comprehensive survey with 94 fractional members of staff. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of the survey. The information is already out there, it's already available online. But let me just give you some of the headlines of the survey. At its core, the survey basically asks fractional staff at SOAS, how many hours are specified in your contract? How many hours do you get paid for those? How much do you get paid for those hours? And what are the actual hours that you work? And the results were somewhat astounding. We divided the total hours of work by the total actual work that we do, by the salary. And we found that the actual hourly wage rate, in most cases, is around about £8.40 per hour. We found that SOAS fractional staff work more than double the hours that we are compensated for. This is an overview of the survey. So we work double the hours that we are compensated for. Whilst we get paid for every hour of teaching that we do, there are lots of other additional tasks that we don't get paid for necessarily. Marking essays, holding office hours, putting together course syllabuses, marking exams, setting exam questions, responding to emails, administrative tasks, and the list go on. On average, we found that the hourly wage rate for the additional hours that fractional staff do is £8.40 an hour, which is below the London living wage. And this is something that we should keep in mind. We found that frequently contracts are misspecified. We found that the way that fractional staff have been treated has led to physical and psychological threats to our well-being. Okay. Of course, for SOAS fractional staff, many of whom are doing their PhDs at SOAS, this effectively often means that many are paying the school twice. Once in tuition fees, which range from £4,000 a year, if you're a home or EU student, to £12,000 or £13,000 a year. And the second time, of course, that SOAS fractional staff who are doing their PhDs are paying the school is through this, essentially what amounts to unpaid labor. How this can be called an internship experience or way of building skills is beyond me. And I would like to add, of course, that there are many of us who have already had years of teaching experience or Intel specialist experiences or regional specialisms or have published works already. And it's not simply the case that the school is doing us a favor, as it were. There are then, of course, what it seems to be wider structural issues that are at play here. It is not by accident that other movements regarding fractional staff or casualized labor are propping up across the UK. It is not by accident that this frustration is emerging at a point when academic institutions have morphed into one-dimensional cost-benefit profit-making entities. In addition, at the level of SOAS, it is not by accident that the Fractionals for Fair Play campaign has emerged in a year in which SOAS has faced a national dispute at the UCU level, the Justice for Cleaners campaign, and efforts by SOAS's Democratize SOAS campaign to organize and investigate the role of SOAS's governing body. A wider structural issue on how SOAS is being run is at stake here. the Times Higher Education Supplement did a survey of more than 50 institutions to show that pay varies from less than £10 to £12 per hour at the low spectrum of institutions to around about £40 an hour at other institutions in terms of what fractional staff are paid for the amount of work that they do. But if we take the detail that we're getting from our surveys and the survey that Fractional for Fair Play has completed, SOAS ranks at the bottom in actual terms of how it remunerates its fractional staff in comparison with its competitors. There is this wider structural issue that cannot be ignored. While SOAS BA students are now paying £9,000 per year in tuition fees, and master's students pay anything from £7,000 to £17,000 a year, they are regularly being taught by fractional staff, many of whom are sitting in this room today, who are earning less than the London living wage. We are providing a cheap labour pool to provide education to thousands. At SOAS, we teach thousands. Some sort of budgetary discrepancy is at play. I'm just going to put that out there. Now, of course, the way in which SOAS fractional staff are unpaid for the hours that we're working in is disheartening. It is humiliating. To undergo this process, it is humiliating. When I told some of my students what I get paid for lecturing them over a term, my students told me that they felt embarrassed. They said they felt ashamed. And some of you are sitting here today, and I thank you for sharing your thoughts with me. And I thank you for your support by being here today. But you are right. It is embarrassing, and it is humiliating. It is a situation that makes me feel undervalued, and it is a situation that makes many of us in this room feel undervalued. It is a situation that has caused many of you to come here today and stand with us in solidarity. Students who should be revising are sitting here with us today. Permanent staff members who are standing with us in solidarity today. Fractional staff from other universities are here today. Support from the union and anti-casualisation campaign that's taking place. And critically, of course, SOAS's Amazing Justice for Cleaners campaign are here today standing with us in solidarity. Yes, we should clap for them. But the reality is that it's not us that should be embarrassed by the situation. It's not us that should feel shame. The reality is that the school should be embarrassed that it is treating its staff in such a way. SOAS is an institution that we should be proud of. Look around the room, look at the contacts that we make, look at the people, the friendships, the research that we do. We should be proud of this institution. This is an institution that many of us care about, but we instead are left embarrassed by it. And these feelings of embarrassment are not just for us as individuals. These are feelings of embarrassment that transfer to the school. In the current moment, as a result of our situation, many of us are no longer willing to engage in any further unpaid labour unless we are given concrete guarantees that our grievances will be addressed, that our contracts will be reformed, and that this issue will not be replicated for future MPhil and PhD students who are looking to go into teaching at some point next year and the year after. We have lots of first year and second year PhD students who are involved in the campaign and who are sitting with us as well today. Of course, for the students who are sitting here, we want you to know that we want you to have as many resources at your disposal as you go ahead in your exams. We take seriously your intellectual efforts and the thoughts that you have put into your work. We care about your academic progression and we care about your futures. But we do not know how we can, in effect, engage in what is our own humiliation and still teach you about global politics, resistance movements, global justice, power, and the like. How can we speak and teach these things if we cannot speak for ourselves? Woo! And I'd like to just close up by just saying a few things. So I'll just take about another 3 to 4 minutes, Faisy, if that's okay. Faisy is good with timekeeping. So I would just like to close up by saying a few things. I would like to the problem. Fractional staff are not the problem. Funnily, in the past few weeks, we have been told time and time again that the Fractionals for Fair Pay campaign and what we are asking for is problematic. By stating that we are unwilling to further engage in any unpaid labour, we are being positioned as a radical or fringe group holding the university hostage. Many of you will have received emails about this. Of course, we know that this is a classic tactic of the structurally more powerful oppressor attempting to exert its power and control over the narrative and maintain the status quo, delay and change nothing. But let us be clear about a few things. First, we are not a fringe group. There are over 100 fractional staff actively mobilized. This is GTAs, teaching fellows, senior teaching fellows across this campaign, across 24 different departments. We've had public statements of support from 7 different departments at SOAS, as well as 2 union motions in our favor, as well as other campaigns standing with us in solidarity. And our success in this campaign, in getting this transient, temporary, casualized labor force mobilized, is a result of us being able to speak across these different spectrums, across these different departments, and speaking to a shared frustration and a shared desire for reform. Second, we are not asking for the moon. We are not asking for £300,000 per week on Wayne Rooney contracts or anything like this, right? We are asking for what is our political and moral right. We are asking for the school to pay us for the hours that we work. This is not rocket science. It's not us that hasn't paid the school. It's not us that has humiliated the school. It has not us that has paid SOAS late or incorrectly. If any of us are PhD students and we hand in a fees late, you know. So we are not an institution. We are a campaign, and we are trying to act in a collective way with the best interests of the school and the student at heart. SOAS is an institution, and it is an institution that needs to act in a responsible manner. Only one negotiation meeting has taken place between fractionals and UCU management so far, and this was taking place on March the 27th. And the school was provided with concrete, detailed proposal by the fractional campaign and by the union for a reformation of the fractionals contract, which included payment for all of the hours that we have worked, including adequate time allocated for marking and for preparation. And the school could have ended the issue there. But there hasn't been, since the 27th of March, a clear indication of the concrete action on the part of the school to assure us that our campaign claims will be met. There is no clear indication that we are going to be compensated for the work that we are being asked to do. A further meeting has been arranged for process, which we welcome. But in order to move forward, we have to be clear that we need the school to respond to our concrete proposal and set a series of dates for substantive negotiation meetings to come up with a resolution and a fair deal and a fair contract. We want a resolution. We care about our students. We have worked with many of you for 1 term, for 2 terms, for a year, in my case for 3 years. And we want you to be in a position where you can go into your futures with confidence. And we want a concrete response to our proposals. The moment to act is now. And we thank everybody in this room for being here and for showing us the support. But we really want to emphasize that the moment to act is now. And we call on the school to listen to our demands so that we can move forward for a better university and for a better experience. SOAS is a special place, and it deserves to evoke feelings of pride rather than shame. So let us move forward towards that now.
Thank you, Sana. That's a wonderful speech. Next, we'd like to call on Meera Sabaratnam, who is a lecturer in the politics department, and she's someone who's supported the campaign from the very beginning, and yeah, she's just played a very, very good role in support of the campaign. Meera.
Thanks very much. What I want to talk about today is not really the specifics of what's going on, but to help us think about the broader changes in the university sector to help us make sense of this exploitation. I mean, it's not rocket science, but it's worth repeating in order to try and think outside this box that we appear to be in. As many of you will be aware, the university sector has been undergoing a lot of changes, especially over the last 20 years. There have been drives to marketise universities, to make them profit-making entities. State support is gradually being withdrawn in terms of teaching and research, and universities are being asked to make up that shortfall through increasing fees for undergrads, masters and PhD students, through engaging in corporate activities, to renting out event space, to kind of co-branding with corporate sponsors and so on. So we've got this drive towards the university as a profit-making machine. And of course that has implications for how it treats its workers. So now its workers are, like any other resource, a resource to be squeezed to the maximum. The implications of this, of course, are that fractional staff, as a vulnerable resource who are insecure in their labour, who are numerous and in plentiful supply because of university attitudes towards marketising PhD places, means that they are kind of ripe for the picking. They're eager to please. There's a lot of them. They're keen to get ahead in academic careers, which is a very worthy attribute, and it's precisely that which universities as a whole are able to crib out of. And Sana's done an excellent job of explaining exactly how and exactly where that labour is squeezed in terms of unpaid hours for marking, lecture attendance, all of that goodwill which is meant to be developed from a university career. I think there's two kind of key things I want to say about this. And one is about the attitude towards academics in general, which allows this situation to exist. So I think the perception that universities, and particularly the management of universities, have allowed to flourish is that academics are, an old privileged set, right? They are the gentlemen of the game, and therefore asking them to engage in voluntary cooperative activities is entirely in keeping with a voluntaristic and gentlemanly spirit of academia. So if one is asked to take on a few more extra dissertations, one behaves like a good chap and simply accepts it. But this is important because the public image of academia, I think, remains one of academia as the ivory tower, as the sort of privileged Oxbridge education where those who enter the profession are already themselves privileged, perhaps cosseted by money from mum and dad or the landed estates. And one can therefore afford to think about such crazy questions as, philosophical ontologies or power and resistance, effectively, as one of the Guardian comment blogs put it, as a sort of trustafarian existence. And this is a real problem. Why? Because the people that we are seeing coming through our universities now are not from those privileged backgrounds. If we look around ourselves in the room and look at the fractional workers and the students and the staff, this is no longer the old aristocracy fighting a reactionary fight against being asked to work hard for actual pay. This generation of academics, this generation of teachers, comes from a wider background. Definitely not a perfect background, but definitely a wider background. And for these people, it matters to have one's labour rewarded appropriately. Okay? And this is the major social change that attitudes towards academia have not really taken into account. And this means that this spirit of voluntarism is now a spirit of exploitation, where, if at all, it was legitimate to expect people to engage in kind of reciprocal voluntaristic labour practices, it's now not legitimate because the people who are trying to make it in academic careers are supporting families, are in single income households, are fighting to pay their rent, and especially we see with the sort of real terms wage cuts across the sector that's particularly true. And they're also fighting for the right to a kind of a dignified career, and it's not a protection of dignities which are, sort of extensive privileges eroding, but the right to, be respected in the workplace, the right to see one's labour recognised, if you like, the old fights of workers who have been exploited. That's not to say that being an academic in an institution like this isn't a privilege in some senses. It is a privilege. It's a pleasure, and all of us who work here every day, I think, do remember that, even as we struggle through piles of marking and so on. But that's not to say it is social privilege, and therefore that's not to say that the labour shouldn't be rewarded. The last thing I'll say is really the question of, does it have to be this way? Okay, so we're in this, apparently the structural situation where universities are gunning for money and academics are gunning for pride. And there seems to be this zero-sum game between the interests of universities and the interests of the people that work in the universities. And this is the equation that we're being asked to swallow. The more you ask for, the more it will damage the university. I don't believe this is a zero-sum game. I think we can demonstrate, and people are doing the work to demonstrate, that universities are making particular choices. They may be driven by particular agendas, and we think these agendas maybe are short-termist and short-sighted, and frankly misplaced, right? The agenda to make universities long-term financial machines at all costs, I think is misplaced. I mean, what's the point of trying to keep the factory open at all costs, right? Something's got to give. Universities have to understand that their function is not corporate survival, right? Their function is providing a good educational establishment, providing a decent workplace, providing a place where people learn through doing as well as kind of in the classroom, and engaging with the publics, right? Really serving the publics that they are supposed to serve, right? And I'm not one that defends the old kind of ivory tower of academia. With this in mind, what kind of universities can we build and what should we be building it on? And I think it's great that we're all coming together to say that it should not be built on exploitation, right? This is not the zero-sum game which we accept. We don't accept these equations of how universities can go forward. We think that this should be built on recognition. Yes, we want to have a say in our universities being viable, but being viable doesn't mean taking as much money as we can from students, taking as much money as we can from PhDs, and then squeezing as much labour as we can out of the staff. It's got to mean a balance of all of the things that we are actually doing, right? Our actual core objectives as an institution, and rewarding the people that work here, making them feel valued, and helping them survive. You know, if fractionals don't survive, okay, there might be next year a tranche to take over, but the more you squeeze people, the worse the work becomes, and eventually we'll get into the situation where it is actually only the rich that can afford to be academics, and I think that would reverse a lot of the gains that we've made over the last 20 years. Anyway, I'll close it by just saying that I don't speak for all permanent staff by any means, but I'm really proud to see the fractionals standing up for themselves and recognising their conditions, and I really hope that they get the just contracts that they deserve.
So next we'll have Adrian Budd, who is the SOAS, the UCU secretary at London South Bank University.
I know the organisers were worried about it as I came in, about the turnout because of the strike and whatever other local reasons, but frankly it's a magnificent turnout, and your campaign is inspirational, even in the 30 minutes that I've been involved in it. What I want to do is just say three things very shortly. One, to offer solidarity. Secondly, to bring forth to you an important lesson locally at South Bank University. And thirdly, to issue a warning, not specifically to you and not being all teachly about it, but to make a warning about the general situation we face in UCU at the moment. Firstly, the solidarity. At South Bank, we're organising our own campaign around fractionalisation, around HPLs and the use of sessionals. It's nothing on the scale that you have here. We've heard recently from our management, we have 20 lecturing staff on lecturing only contracts. It's nothing like the scale of assault that you're facing. Nevertheless, it's a move in the wrong direction, and we need to nip that in the bud. So we are working with our HPL sessionals and fractional staff to try to get best practice around the sector using models from City University, University of East London and so on. And I hope that we can work together, and there's no doubt something that we can bring to that, and more likely you can bring to us, given what I've seen today. That's the first thing. The second thing is the lesson. At South Bank, a few years ago now, we had a particularly vicious neoliberal Vice-Chancellor come in. A nutcase. His nickname at his previous, he was previously the head of the National Science Museum, he had a dreadful nickname amongst staff, and in his last few months, his senior management team turned their back on him as he walked along the corridor. Our Board of Governors, and this is an issue of governance, barrow boys with businesses employing people with a similar outlook to run universities, chose him. And on his first parents' evening, the award ceremony for the best dissertation award of the previous year, he said, I got an O-level and a third-class physics degree, and I couldn't see the point of going on beyond that. I went into management. And he told this to the parents and extolled the virtues of an education. This is a Vice-Chancellor. That's the direction we're moving in. The union has tried to pick up the pieces thereafter. Now, what we did, he took us out of national pay bargaining, wanted to go to local pay bargaining, performance-related pay. What we did, by chance, we were negotiating a renewal of the appraisal document at the time, and we said, no performance-related pay, no local pay bargaining, we will stop being appraised. It was chance. We hit upon it. As it happens, it stymied them, but it was a long drawn-out campaign. We had solidarity from the union across the country, FE sector and HE sector, and over, I suppose it was 18 months, we won, and we went back into national pay bargaining. As it happens, the knock-on consequence is that we've now got a culture of not being appraised. Nobody gets appraised anymore because we didn't do it for 18 months. And even at enormous cost to full-time staff. My wife, for instance, it cost her £1,500 not to be appraised because you couldn't get your conference fees paid and travel expenses without the appraisal. So she was going off to wherever she was going off at her own expense. But they stuck by it. And that's the crucial lesson. If you fight, you can win. And we've seen this in the FE sector. Tower Hamlets College a few years ago, they took a terrible gamble. They fought. And after 2.5 weeks of all-out strike, they won. Lambeth College launches an all-out strike on tomorrow. And it's vital that we stand by them. I'm completely convinced that when we confront management, they will buckle if we offer solidarity. Now, there are those, and I've been involved in these sorts of debates, there's an argument on the left and in the union movement about the balance between structural arguments for the non-combativity of the labour movement over the last couple of decades, and more arguments about consciousness, the subjective element. And truthfully, often I'm on the structuralist argument. Neoliberalism, I think, has had some consequences. And then you see Ed Miliband speak, and you immediately realise how wrong you are. It's all about leadership and consciousness. We are lions led by donkeys in the labour movement, and have been for 2 or 3 decades. Whenever he speaks, you realise the big problem is nobody believes you're ever going to do anything. And that saps the morale, which is why your campaign is so vital in revitalising the morale of the labour movement more generally. And that's where I'm coming to my warning. Because UCU currently is in a situation where we've stuck it out for, what is it now, about 8 months of a dispute over pay. Where we voted for something at Congress, we reinforced that vote in a ballot, and then our lead negotiators pulled the plug to a degree and demobilised it. They attacked the democracy of those 2 decisions. In the process, they demobilised the people who are willing to fight. They've disillusioned us. This is all from Rosa Luxemburg, by the way, the DD. You know, those who've read Reform and Revolution will recognise it. The de-escalation demobilises, de-radicalises, and ultimately demoralises us. Now, we're not fully demoralised. We are currently involved in a consultative ballot, which closes in whenever it is, a day or 2. We hope that enough people are still fired up, but the chances are they might not be. And this is why the left is so important. The UCU left, which I'm a proud member of, working with our students, with other groups in the labour movement, can begin to row back against what promises to build, suggests is going to be a very serious setback. And I would just quote one of our senior national negotiators, Michael McNeil. He said, as the process unfolded of launching the pay negotiations, he said to the branches, if we don't fight over pay now and win a decent pay rise, will be out of the game for 2 or 3 years. A union that takes 5 years of defeat over pay and won't fight back is out of the game for 2 or 3 years. McNeil is now launched into the rowback, so he's not consistent with his thinking. It's up to the left to continue to fight. It's marvellous to hear John McDonnell's message of support. It's vital that just across the river, South Bank University and you work together on fighting for decent conditions for fractional staff and to make people fractional who are currently sessional or HPL. Fractionalisation is actually a positive campaign if there are decent pay attached to it. A defeat on pay in our union will be a serious setback, but campaigns like yours can begin to rebuild the left, and we rebuild the union, rebuild the labour movement, rebuild the left within the labour movement, and we must hope that we can take that forward together. I commend your combativity. It's magnificent to see on a day like this. So many people. I don't know where you've all come from, but somebody, I think it might have been Sana, said at she spoke towards the end. It was a sort of a balmer moment. Yes, we can. She said the moment to act is now. You need to get some posters made up like this. Now, tonight, take them to UCU negotiators. The moment to act is now, because we can win these disputes.
Thank you, Adrian. Thanks for your support. I also forgot to say that we do have a Twitter account. The campaign has a Twitter account, and the hashtag for this evening and forevermore is We Are All Fractionals. So if you are tweeting, it's hashtag We Are All Fractionals. Okay, so next we'll hear from Jamie Woodcock, who's on the UCU Anti-Casualisation Committee. Jamie.
So I'd like to start off by saying thank you very much for inviting me to come and speak. I've been following the campaign closely on the internet since I saw it begin, and it's wonderful when you've been following a campaign from afar to come to a meeting room, so full after a working day with all the kind of difficulties people may have had getting in here. Now, what I want to start off by saying is I'm the hourly paid and part-time rep at Goldsmiths. Where we have a very, very supportive branch that supports anti-casualisation work. But I'm also on the UCU Anti-Casualisation Committee. And the picture nationally is very, very diverse. There are lots of very bad examples of what's happening in particular institutions. PhD funding becoming combined with having to teach, so effectively some PhD students being forced to teach without a wage. Some departments and institutions getting rid of all of their casual staff, pushing the work onto established lecturers. But there are also some quite good examples of practice. And I think what we need to start doing is looking at those good examples and starting to argue that there is a different way that this kind of teaching can be delivered. And that's what I think is so incredibly important about this campaign, is that it's being led by the people who are doing the teaching, who are formulating the kind of demands about what they think, how they think education should be delivered. And particularly with students in the room, this is the way that we're going to start fighting back against the kind of program of privatisation that's going through universities. And I just want to do a quick plug for a UCU Anti-Casualisation Day of Action, which is coming up on the 7th of May, where the plan is to have on campuses across the whole country action of various kinds to kind of raise the profile of anti-casualisation. In previous years at Goldsmiths, we're an arts college, so we built a giant iceberg last year to highlight how much work goes on under the waterline. It's quite nice. But what I wanted to say, other than kind of stringing a whole load of puns about icebergs, which I've kind of done to death really, is to say I think it's incredibly important that we use the kind of creative skills that our PhD students and our postdocs have in the campaigning that we're doing. Because one of the changes in higher education is this real kind of the need to build a brand, the need to kind of compete on issues that aren't your kind of teacher's skills and how much they're getting paid. It means that actually lots of universities are becoming kind of vulnerable to bad publicity and to bad press. So this year, what we're going to do at Goldsmiths is we've worked out, our Vice Chancellor is called a warden, we've worked out how many hours a seminar leader would have to teach to gain his wage, which ours is relatively low down the pay scale, but you'd have to teach 112 seminars a week, which is 3 simultaneously for every working hour, and then I assume you'd have to kind of simultaneously prepare for them through the night as well. And what I think is important about this is when we talk about our pay as casual members of staff, when we talk about how much students are having to pay in, where is the money going? It's not going into, it's not going into student services, it's not going into pay for staff, but it's going into a massive kind of bloating layer of management that has been discussed earlier. They don't teach, many of them don't come from education backgrounds. They come into universities to try and turn a profit. And I think it's really, really important in campaigns like this that we do point the finger. How much of a salary increase has your Vice Chancellor got this year? How much has been offered to the people who actually do the teaching? And crucially, we don't just limit these discussions to on our campuses. We use social media, we use social media, we talk to other people, we raise the campaign. The idea of John McDonnell standing up in Parliament and talking about this is a perfect example. Let's shame our university managers and raise awareness for these campaigns. Now, what I want to say is that although I'm involved in UCU nationally around anti-casualisation, I think we have a kind of dual fight going on. We have fights in our own institutions around pay and around conditions. I think we also have quite a big fight to make the union take anti-casualisation seriously. Because for many people, they don't understand the reality of teaching today. I was speaking to a fairly senior professor of sociology of work recently who didn't realise there were casual contracts in higher education. He said, are you ready for your postdoc and your lectureship? I said, this isn't actually the reality narrative. And so I think rather than just kind of, it's kind of funny, but what we also have to do is I think we have to remind established staff what the conditions are like. Because the key for us in these campaigns is to find a way to bring our struggles against casualisation together with the broader struggles inside the university. Now, of course, that means convincing more established lecturers to take things seriously. It also means linking up with other campaigns on the campus, with outsourced workers, with other disputes that are going on. And what I want to kind of finish on is, I think it's brilliant, the survey that's been conducted. We also did one at Goldsmiths. We, along with the NUS, previously did a big survey. And what I think is interesting about this is if your management, you come from a kind of different sector, and you mess with social science students, actually, we have a lot of ability to conduct surveys and quantitative analysis to work out exactly how much we're getting paid. And we really need to drive forward on these things, because we have a lot of skills that we can bring to organising on our campuses. And I think when we let the kind of union campaigns get limited to the question of pay, or the question of just pensions, we should absolutely throw ourselves in behind these, as many of us did, despite the fact we can't be in the same pension schemes and so on. I think we need to start asking the kind of broader questions, because in a sense, a campaign just around pay, it's a bit like being in a lecture theatre that's on fire. You open a window at the back of the lecture theatre to let out some smoke. We all support that. It's a brilliant thing to do. But ultimately, the lecture theatre is still burning down. And so what I think is so important about today is to see an example that we do need to generalise out, of people organising in a workplace over a concrete issue of pay that builds confidence, combativity, and so on. What we need to start doing is asking those broader questions. Now that we have the level of organisation to do something at this institution, what else would we change about the institution? Is it just a question of pay, or do we need to start tackling questions that in the past we haven't seen as issues we can deal with? Managerialism, the control over our own labour process, the kind of research we're allowed to do. These are all exciting questions that I think can lead bigger campaigns that need to happen, but they all start from the point of organisation like this, over the issues of pay, over the issues of contracts. And ultimately, as a layer of casual staff, we're the people who are going to be doing the teaching, hopefully not until kind of 80 or 90 years old if the pension changes go through, but we're the next generation of academics. And if we don't fight now, we're not going to end up with the kind of education system that we want in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie. Next year we'll hear from Des Friedman, who is Professor at Goldsmiths in Media Studies. He's also the UCU Badge Secretary there.
But partly for selfish reasons, because I hope you win because it's going to make a difference up and down the country. I mean, at Goldsmiths, we have very recently concluded an agreement for hourly paid staff, which basically puts them on the same terms and conditions as permanent staff. We had to fight for that. It took a very long time. And I think it's a good, decent agreement, but there are lots of problems with it, both in the implementation and in the impact. It doesn't address some of the questions about, really compensating you for the actual work that you do. And I suspect, as proud as I am that we forced management into signing it, that we're going to have a lot of battles over this. And so the resolution, the conclusion of your kinds of struggles are really going to be played out for other people. So no pressure, but we are watching and I hope also participating. Now, it must feel a bit strange for all of you because, in a way, these kinds of struggles don't happen all the time of fractional staff taking the lead. But the first thing to think of is that you are in a long and very fine tradition of fighting on campuses. I mean, graduate students fighting back has been going on, particularly in North America, since the 1970s. The wave of campus struggle over opposing the Vietnam War, over asking fundamental questions about whose universities they were accompanied at that time by graduate students organising, and that's a struggle. It has its peaks and its troughs, but it still continues to this day. Last month, graduate students and undergraduates at University of California, Santa Cruz, the centre of surfing, managed to take time off from the beach to launch a great struggle. They are members of the United Automobile Workers, a mass industrial union, and they won their demand. So it's still continuing. Now, why is it continuing? Is it just there are these tight managements who just have this thing against graduate students? They're just jealous of them. They want to make you suffer. I think we can see today that it's quite the opposite. I don't know what particularly, I'm not that interested in what the personalities of the SOAS management are like. That's not the point. The point is that university managements up and down the country are dealing with a situation in which we've had the most completely crazy and short-sighted and inconsistent higher education policy that has introduced, for ideological reasons, competition, because they thought, ideologically speaking, that this would increase the marketisation and somehow increase the attractiveness of British universities. What it's meant is, we know that it's huge debts for many of the students, but we know that also for institutions, it's the possibility of a lot of money, but it's insecurity and volatility for everyone. And what's the first response in a very insecure and volatile atmosphere? Well, who are you going to try and nail down? And of course, who are the most, just as, unemployment has always been used as a threat, a discipline against workers. In a way, casualisation is doing exactly that for universities. So sadly, casual staff, and we know that, casualisation is endemic in the education sector. It is the second most casualised sector in this country. And here it's for a reason, because they want to make you be, the sort of buffers to exploit you as much as possible in these particularly difficult times. So it's not an accident, and it will go on unless we have the kind of resistance that you are launching here, which is exactly why it's so crucial to make links with other permanent staff members, because we are going through the same things, albeit maybe it's a different speed, there are different ways of acting it out, but we have the common interest in doing that, because we know that one thing they are looking at are staff costs. How do we drive, it's not a coincidence that Times Higher has regular percentage tables of the proportion of income that is taken up by staff. They want to drive that down. When it's 59.5%, it is at SOAS, not bad, you need to push it up a little bit more. But we know that management want to push it down a little bit. And that process of exploitation, it's not an abstract word, it is reducing the cost in order that their costs, our income, for all of us, in order to build up assets, in order to build up particularly the kinds of surpluses that they want for a rainy day, or maybe not so rainy. They just want those surpluses, and we are going to be the ones who are made to pay. So I think unity, it was fantastic to hear a full-time, permanent staff member here, and I know that the different departments have taken part. That is absolutely crucial for you both to talk to students, to argue with management, and to bring permanent staff on board. And I think fractionals are in a great position because by and large, you're in the middle a little bit. You are both staff members and you are students. That's fantastic because actually you've got the best channels into everywhere. Management are a bit scared of you because they think you are potentially a bit nuts because you're a bit unpredictable. You have the best channel to the students because you teach them, because you can actually, you're the ones, I'm jealous of our PhD students who are much more, in a way, active researchers than I am in a way. They're doing it 24 hours a day. They have the impact with students I can only dream of. So I think you should be exploiting that power that you have, the fear that you can throw at management, as well as the potential support you should have with students and with other people. So as I say, no pressure on you to win, but there are many, many people who are looking at the result of this because they see this as something that is decisive to knock back the kind of assaults that managements are conducting up and down the country. So I said, I bring solidarity from Goldsmiths, where we voted formally at our last branch meeting, thanks Jamie, to support you, and I said good luck. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Des. And you can read that statement of support from Goldsmiths UCU on our web page, fractionalsupportplay.webs.com, or on our Facebook page, which is all there. Now I'd like to, one of the things that we've taken great inspiration from actually at SOAS, the fractional campaign has, is from the cleaners campaign, Justice for Cleaners, and we're very, very pleased to have Lennon here. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the Fractionals for Fair Play campaign to invite us. To be honest, for me, it's a privilege and an honor to be here because I start to get used to give a speech outside in the steps. For me, it's the first time that I've been joined this panel. So I feel very happy, to be honest. Yeah. I would like to say very briefly about the campaign because this is an open meeting. Maybe there are outsider people. Maybe they don't know about the Justice for SOAS Cleaner campaign. First of all, my name is Lenin Escudero. I'm one of the SOAS cleaners. I've been working at SOAS for 12 years. We started Justice for SOAS Cleaner campaign in 2007, where we demand three things. Just a lot of living wage, union recognition, and be brought back in-house means be treated the same as the rest of the SOAS staff. So the first year of campaign, we won the London living wage and also we won the union recognition. And then, unfortunately, the SOAS denied us the opportunity to be brought back in-house. So that means we continue work as outsourced cleaners, which means injustice and exploitation. So that's why a few years back, we started to organize again, because as a cleaner, we believe that we are no less than nobody here at this university. And also, we believe that our job is very important for the running of this university. And so that's why we decided to launch a campaign again for be brought back in-house. We did so many things. We did demonstration, petition, referendum. We did a lot of things to make this university to understand that we deserve to be treated as not as a second-class workers, as just as SOAS cleaners. But unfortunately, this university denied us the opportunity to treat us with dignity and respect. So that's why we set a dispute, and the dispute was for sick pay and holiday pay and pension. in order to push this university to be brought back in-house. After 3 successful days of strike, this university understand that they couldn't cope anymore with the noise or with the strike of the cleaners, and they start. They call us on the Vegas to start the negotiation. After a few offers launched from the university and from the company, and we set an agreement, which is, in our point of view, the SOAS cleaner on the campaign was a very good offer, was accepted, which is a very huge improvement in sick pay and holiday pay and pension. I would like to express my joy and my overwhelmed with all of you, because we are so happy with the agreement that we launched so far. But it's not what the campaign is about, because the campaign is about equality and justice. It's like we can say, it's like we have won the first round in battle, but the struggle continues, because we are not gonna stop until to get equality and justice in this university, because we strongly believe everyone who work under this university deserves to be treated equally and with justice. I'm here today on behalf of all my SOAS cleaners, and also on behalf of the Justice for SOAS Cleaner campaign, to show solidarity with the Fractionals for Fair Play campaign. And you have come with us. You can come with us. We are going to support you fully in all your struggle, because we believe that you are treated in a different manner. As a SOA cleaners, we don't want anyone who works under this roof to be treated differently, because we believe that everyone needs to be treated with equality and justice. So that's why we are showing you support, and we're going to continue supporting you in your struggle, so you can come with us. And also, we are not going to stop fighting until to get equality and justice for everyone who works under this university. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ellen. I think we can all say that we're very proud to work with you and other cleaners in this institution. Just before we bring in our last speaker, Georgie Robertson from the Democratise SOAS campaign, I just wanted to say that Johnny Darlington, who's the branch secretary of UCU at SOAS, had to send his apologies, but he very much supports the campaign, and he's actually been, from the beginning, he's been extremely supportive and, an important person for us to talk to. So Georgie's going to tell us about Democratise SOAS.
Hi, so I'm Georgie. I'm a final year student, and I'm the campaigns officer in the Students' Union. And some of what I wanted to say has already been said far more eloquently than I could. So yeah, I can focus on Democratise SOAS and also, student support for the campaign. The Students' Union, I'm expressing on behalf of the Student Union its full solidarity with and support for the Fractionals for Fair Play campaign. And I want to say a bit about why students should, and I think why most of them do, support the campaign. So Mira's already explained the neoliberal logic that's increasingly being applied to higher education, and how this has involved a casualisation of teachers' labour, as well as course cuts. In SOAS, this has particularly affected history of art, and study of religion. So these are deemed as less profitable departments. We know about the national 13% pay cut for permanent staff and increasing outsourcing of contracts and use of zero-hour outsourcing of services and use of 0 hours contracts in universities. So this is the context where universities are spending students' increased tuition fees on marketing and branding and expanding, including the expansion of senior managements and their salaries, rather than on teachers' pay. And so as the